Our concern here is that the Fourth Amendment says that no warrant shall issue except upon probable cause, and it must specifically describe the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. And so, as has been admitted by the NSA, there is not probable cause for the collection of your phone records or my phone records. And those warrants do not particularly describe anything. They say, we need all of the phone records for the past 90 days from Verizon and AT&T. And so, as far as we can tell, that's a clear Fourth Amendment violation. It could not, the government isn't even claiming that they have probable cause for your phone records or my phone records. And so we honestly were shocked. We thought that when these revelations came out, all the congressmen would go, oh my God, I had no idea this was happening, this needs to end. And so we were very disappointed to see that,
Well, because one of the things I have a little more detail than you have, probably, some of which I can talk about, some of which I can't talk about, clearly. Because certain things are classified and other things are not classified. And that's just where, so if one says, get rid of classified information, I'll have to
right.
be against
And we're
that.
certainly not saying that.
So there's certain things I can talk about, certain things I don't, because I sit on a Foreign Affairs Committee, and certain other things I have access to various information, which I think is important. And I also think that there's a difference in what was prior to President Obama, for example, coming into office, and how NSA was collecting information and how they did it. Because in that instance, I might agree with you that it may have been a violation because there was no court system or anything of that nature that was in place. It was just by on its own without anybody overseeing anything or anything of that nature. As well as the fact that, in trying to give you that, no conversation of anyone's, anyone, the information that they have, from what I understand, no, they can't say that they can't listen into that conversation. They're not reading your emails on a daily basis or anything else. The fact of the matter is, probably more intrusive than what the NSA is doing is what has come out with reference to some of retailers who are watching how people shop.
You're referring to the Nordstrom
that's correct.
Wi-Fi tracking.
That's exactly right.
Sure. And so I think a lot of people make this comparison to,
let me
private
finish.
court. Okay, sure.
And so, now, I think that if the vote or the argument was that we've got to figure out a way, keeping in mind the constraints that one has to have for certain sensitive information, but if we were working toward a way to make or to find out or to have more transparency on how the FISA court gets the information and makes its determination, then that's something that I'd be willing to talk about. See, if there was no FISA court, then, and people were acting in an arbitrary way, then I would probably be on your side. And the FISA court's acting the way it currently is because once upon a time, there was no FISA court. And to me, that's a direct violation of the Constitution. Now, what has caused a lot of individuals to be really upset because they don't understand how the FISA court's been working. They don't understand or hasn't been transparent in that regards. And so what individuals are saying, which I think then we have to figure out a way to make it more transparent. They call the FISA court a rubber stamp court. And if it's a rubber stamp court, then we've got to find out, to me, before I take any drastic moves that will endanger or possibly endanger the lives of Americans, I want to make sure. So if we were talking about trying to figure out how the FISA court could be more transparent,
sure,
so that we can then move in that direction without, and also doing that without giving up top secret information, then, we have a conversation because then it would be, and the reason why the president put in place the FISA court system, etc., because to a degree it is supposed to mimic in the manner that the regular courts work when you give out a warrant. Every time you have a warrant or something of that nature, I'm a former prosecutor, by the way. Mm-hmm. The person that you got the warrant on doesn't know it, and sometimes, because the case has never come out, or you don't have the case No one ever knows it, although the person's phones had been in fact tapped.
Sure.
So, but it's the court system that has to approve the warrant, etc., before you go forward. Similarly, is why somebody has to go to the FISA system, so the FISA court rather, trying to make sure that we have that kind of checks and balances.
Right. So I totally understand that. And I definitely have a lot of responses to the various things you said, but I think we'd like to really focus it on the Fourth Amendment. So is it your opinion that a warrant that collects the phone records of every Verizon subscriber for 90 days, do you believe that there is probable cause, that is a warrant issued based upon probable cause?
It is my opinion that the NSA and the government is required to not issue a warrant themselves. They have to go and give a reason to the FISA court for why they're asking for the information that they are asking.
And so
as a prosecutor or anyone else would have to go to a court to get, for whatever the reason is, to get whatever information.
Understood. But again, the Fourth Amendment says no warrant shall issue except upon probable cause. So is it your position that the government is arguing that it has probable cause? Because that's clearly stated as a requirement by the Fourth Amendment.
Who would the government argue it to?
To the FISA court.
Okay.
So
who would make the decision?
Well, again,
who would make a decision whether or not it was constitutional or not?
FISA court.
The courts.
Well,
just
the
like,
FISA
for example,
court,
the Supreme Court.
It's not a warrant.
The Supreme Court and our court judicial system is the one that determines oftentimes whether something is constitutional or not. That's where we go. We take it to court to decide, because we've had certain issues, certain times, certain things that we think that are constitutional.
And when the ACLU tried to challenge these policies, the case was dismissed because they couldn't show standing. They couldn't prove that they had been spied upon. But aside from that, again, just to focus on the text of the Fourth Amendment. The text of the Fourth Amendment says no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, and it says that it must particularly describe the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. So I'm asking, you are voted for these policies, so presumably...
What I'm trying to explain to you is that the Constitution is a living document.
Okay.
And it's always subject to somebody's interpretation.
Okay.
Generally, what we rely upon is the courts, when we have the argument, to determine the interpretation of whether something breaks the law or does not.
But you voted...
And we've had in history cases, and sometimes it's been overturned, where the court has said, for example, and what I believe was a violation, the court said at one time it wasn't. Then later, almost 50, 60 years later, it came around and turned itself around.
Right, but you voted for this program. And so again...
What I voted for was to
continue funding
this program.
Right.
Because I didn't have any bases. I didn't say, there was no basis. No one has, you need to take it to court. I didn't, for me, we're a country of laws. What was in place and is found constitutional is that we have a court system. And as I said, if there was no courts or someone else to overview whatever the evidence was, some of which I can't even talk about, that they submitted to the FISA court, whatever that evidence was, that's then was subject to whether or not there was probable cause or not. And the courts have to make that jurisdiction.
Right, but the government is not arguing.
The
government is not arguing. So my question is, and I apologize, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but we really would like a direct answer. Do you believe that the programs that you voted to continue to fund meet two requirements? One, that these warrants are supported by probable cause, and two, that they particularly describe the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized? We're asking for a direct answer for a program that you voted for.
No, you would have to know, as I told you, there's information I can't give you.
Right, but based on that information
you would have to know what information was given to the courts in order to make a judgment.
But you voted for the program. And so I'm asking, in
your
opinion...
I may know more than you.
Hold on. So in your opinion, are these programs, is a FISA warrant issued for 90 days of Verizon subscriber call information, is that based upon probable cause, and does it particularly describe...
The question that you ask can't be answered.
I'm asking... Of course
I'm a prosecutor. If I'm taking a case to the grand jury, the information that I take to the grand jury, you don't know whether it's probable cause or not.
You and I have
nor will the court know until it's heard the evidence.
But you and I have both looked at the warrant that has been issued.
No,
it was leaked.
more than you've looked.
Right. So based on that FISA warrant, which asks for 90 days of all Verizon call records, is that, in your opinion, does that particularly describe the place to be searched and the person who thinks to be
I do not
seized?
believe we've had a violation of the Fourth Amendment as interpreted by the courts thus far.
Okay.
Well, I'm asking you.
So
So in your opinion,
As
then,
interpreted by the courts.
right? But you're avoiding answering the direct question, which I
Because they
appreciate.
can't, because it wouldn't
In
be.
your opinion,
It would not
Ben,
be the correct answer. I'm not going to give you something that can be, certain questions can be answered yes or no. You ask me, for example, I mean,
In your opinion.
I just asked this, you know, you asked me my opinion on this. Let me just say, my opinion, is Mr. Zimmerman guilty of murder or not? Well, I say he's not guilty.
But if you voted on
I
a
say
bill,
he's not guilty. So if I had a vote right now that came in to say that about Mr. Zimmerman, I would have to say he's not guilty, because that's what our judicial system, and I have confidence in the judicial system. And if I think that there's a rule or law that's incorrect therein, then my fight is to change that rule or law. That's what we have to do. Do I think, for example, the Civil Rights Act, the courts just ruled. And they said that what we were doing.
We were kept in the dark about this until very recently,
Yeah.
and we still have no idea
But the
to
other
what
as-
extent
the-
these programs exist.
There's a
You're
lot of
asking
things-
the public to make a choice on something that we have no conscious understanding of what is truly going on. You say you have more information than us. The FISA courts are secret. We don't know what's happening.
And
That
who's
We're
watching
pleading with you,
watchers?
in a
Well,
sense, to
there
prove
is-
to us that you're not violating
Well,
the
let me-
Fourth
let me-
Amendment.
let me-
We're not just taking your
Madison,
word
Madison,
for it.
calm down.
Well, listen,
Sorry.
there are certain things that are top secret. You're not going to know those things. You're just not going to know them. There are certain things in every country that are top secret. That are top secret. That's just the way it is. And you're not, and you're not going to know them. Now there are individuals. What I'm saying is, there are individuals. Your question is who checks what. There are individuals, and what we try to do is to put something in place to oversee it. When the president came in, there was nobody overseeing it. Zero.
The
No.
FISA court was from 1978, though.
Yeah, but they were not overseeing
They're
this
not using
particular
it
event. They
until
was not using
2006.
this. That's right.
Sure.
So when the president came in, he wanted to put something in place in a judicial manner to oversee it. Now, if the question is the overseer doing the job that they or you want them to do, or what kind of information they have, or they're not transparent enough, I said on that we need to look at it and see how we can figure out how we can make it more transparent, though with the limits of not also making it easier for people to attack America, so with top secret information. So you can't reveal all of the top secret information. Now, what's in place now, who's overseeing? I'm not on the Intelligence Committee, but I know that the FISA court information is also overseen by members of Congress who sit on the Intelligence Committee.
Well, Senators Wyden and Udall have been warning the public for years that there are gross abuses going on, and it is illegal for them to reveal those.
And if you listen, well, you can, certain things, but if you listen to Udall, what he's talking about is basically similar to what I'm talking about.
In what sense?
In the sense that what he's saying is that he wants more transparency in regards to how the court's working and the information that the courts are giving, etc. Now, some members make the determination as to what comes first. My determination is I'm not going to vote to end a program without first looking at the process that's in place and where we can fix that process if it's broken. So what we were asked to do last week was just end the program. And then at that point,
Right, because it's an unconstitutional
and
program.
at that point, based upon that, because the number one job that I've taken an oath for
is to protect the
is to
Constitution.
protect the American people.
No, you take an oath to protect the United States
I'm taking
Constitution.
to protect the American people.
What
Because
is-
the Constitution is subject to interpretation.
I believe the oath of federal officials is to protect the United
I
States
have the
Constitution
responsibility-
from enemies, foreign and
I
domestic.
have the
and perhaps
responsibility
that's
of
where we've
protecting
gone
the
wrong.
American people.
You gotta
Well, you'll go
protect the-
wrong. Because if I protected the Constitution, that's
That
it.
is your oath.
No, listen to me. And while the Constitution subject, I'd be in chains still. Because the Constitution said it was okay.
So your opinion is that
So the
you are
Constitution,
not bound
if I
to-
just said that was the Constitution, that's why I said there is subject, and the Constitution, and what is constitutional and what isn't constitutional, has been subject to a court, that makes and renders a decision. And that is the greatness of our Constitution, because we can have that take place without having the kind of craziness that's going on in the streets in Egypt and other places right now.
But
So that we're able to have the kind of flexibility in our Constitution, because if we didn't, and if we didn't leave it up to a court,
right.
because, for example, and you are young, if it wasn't those things that I thought that the law, that the Constitution, some said protected, when I came up, when I was your age, if I'd have just said, oh, it's constitutional, then it would have never changed.
So in
Those
other words,
things, so therefore, but the Constitution had to change. What changed was the courts who interpreted the Constitution.
sure. So those two things I'll say. One is that the FISA court is not an adversarial proceeding. It only has a representative of the government. So I hope you will support the transparency legislation supported by the Need to Know coalition.
And a grand jury, it only has the government.
Sure, but then when that evidence is used, it is clear and the person can challenge it. Whereas when these secret programs have been used to prosecute people, when people try and find out if that's the case, the government has opposed them even finding out if secret programs or how this information was obtained under the State Secrets Act. But again, what I'm hearing you saying is that in terms of your oath to defend the Constitution, that you're saying that because there are problems with the Constitution,
No,
then...
what I'm saying is the Constitution has always been, because what you're trying to make it as a hard yes or no. And I'm saying that that's not how I have to interpret it. And I have to, and you're asking me to cut off funding for a program that has in fact kept America safe.
Well, there's no evidence of that.
Well, there is. I can tell you that part. But without trying to make sure that if there's been plenty of procedures that I want to change. For example, stop and frisk.
Right, that's one of our...
That's got to change.
Right, and that's one of our group's
Now,
demands.
and what I say is, on that, we've got to work to change it.
Well,
Just-
so...
But if I had a vote to say cut off police funding because of stop and frisk, I'm not going to say cut off police funding.
But would you cut off funding for stop and frisk?
Well, stop and frisk is not funded for stop and frisk by
Right,
itself.
well,
We
luckily...
have monthly
So
goals,
I would
though.
not say cut off. That's like what this has. Luckily, this says cut off all NSA funding.
No, it doesn't.
No,
It says
it was-
cut off funding for
Funding,
bulk collection
right.
of phone records.
That's correct.
Well, that's
So
not
That's part.
the
That's the main part of the NSA funding.
To
That's
speak,
factually incorrect, but go
to
ahead.
speak from your experience as a prosecutor, were you here an ADA in Queens County or Kings County? Or
Queens and Manhattan.
okay, so if you, as a prosecutor, wanted to go ahead and seek out a warrant for 2 million Queens residents, could you have gotten that? Go in front of a judge and get a warrant for 2 million Queens residents.
If I had a broad spectrum of individuals that were connected, for example, in a drug ring
Right.
throughout the city of New York in different areas, I've had them where it wasn't 200,
Hundreds or,
where it was 200-300 people. Yeah,
but it wouldn't have been a blanket warrant.
it would have been a warrant. I had to go. I would have said what the warrant was, what I needed, why I needed it.
So could you assure us that the Verizon and AT&T and T-Mobile and Sprint, those warrants, that there's evidence to say every one of their customers